On this day in history, we remember the remarkable individuals who shaped our world. Welcome to Who Died Today in History, where we honor their legacies. From artists to leaders, their impact lives on. If you find their stories meaningful, like, subscribe, and hit the bell to stay connected.
Thank you to all our amazing channel members for your generous support.
Amy Winehouse, the British soul singer with a voice that echoed the pain and passion of jazz greats, died on July 23, 2011, at the age of 27. Her death was ruled accidental alcohol poisoning, her blood alcohol level more than 5 times the legal driving limit. Yet the true cause was more complex, a perfect storm of addiction, fame, mental health struggles, and relentless public scrutiny. Her passing marked the tragic end of a prodigious talent whose artistry and inner turmoil were often inseparable. Amy emerged in the early 2000s as a throwback in sound, but a modern figure in chaos. Her music, especially Back to Black, became a raw diary of heartbreak, addiction, and longing, resonating across generations. However, she was also one of the most hounded celebrities of her time. Paparazzi followed her every misstep, and tabloids chronicled her decline more eagerly than her success. In many ways, her death reflected the darker side of early 21st century celebrity culture, where talent was often overshadowed by spectacle and mental health was poorly understood or mocked. The immediate consequence of her passing was shock, then reflection. Fans mourned, fellow artists paid tribute, and the media, ironically, began discussing the very cruelty they had helped perpetuate. Her death reignited the conversation around the so-called 27 Club, a group of artists like Jimi Hendrix, Janis Joplin, and Kurt Cobain who died at the same age, symbolizing the price of creative genius under pressure. In death, Amy's legend grew. Documentaries, murals, biopics, and tribute concerts now preserve her legacy. Her voice lives on in countless samples, covers, and playlists. Importantly, she also became a posthumous advocate for change. Her struggles spotlighted the need for better support systems for artists facing addiction and mental illness. Amy Winehouse's story reveals much about humanity's relationship with mortality, power, and memory. We are drawn to tragic figures, perhaps because they mirror our own fragility. In immortalizing them, we seek to make sense of lives cut short, to assign meaning to chaos. Through art, we grant them a kind of second life, one where their pain becomes poetry, and their memory offers both caution and inspiration. Amy didn't just sing the blues, she became one, etched forever into the soundtrack of a generation. Montgomery Clift, one of Hollywood's most enigmatic and tragic figures, died on July 23, 1966, at the age of 45 from a heart attack. Though technically a natural death, it was deeply entwined with years of physical decline, substance abuse, and emotional torment. Once hailed as a trailblazer of method acting and a symbol of sensitive masculinity, Clift's death marked the end of a turbulent era in which stardom came at the cost of personal identity and inner peace. Clift rose to fame in the late 1940s and early 1950s, with powerful performances in A Place in the Sun, From Here to Eternity, and Judgment at Nuremberg. His style was intimate, introspective, and haunting, radically different from the commanding bravado of traditional male stars. Yet behind the camera, Clift struggled to reconcile his public image with his private truth. As a closeted gay man during a time of strict moral codes and censorship in Hollywood, he lived with intense emotional isolation. A near-fatal car crash in 1956 left his face disfigured and his spirit fractured, deepening his reliance on painkillers and alcohol. His death reflected the unspoken tragedies of post-war America, of a culture that celebrated freedom and expression, but silenced those who didn't fit the mold. Clift became a symbol of the cost of repressing one's identity and the destructive nature of fame in a system that rewarded appearances over authenticity. He didn't die in front of flashing lights or on a public stage, but alone in his Manhattan townhouse, quietly and almost forgotten by an industry that had once idolized him. The immediate reaction to Clift's death was muted. He had already been written off by much of Hollywood as a fallen star. But over time, appreciation for his contributions and his quiet defiance grew. Today, Clift is revered as a pioneer of a more vulnerable, human style of acting that paved the way for Marlon Brando, James Dean, and later, modern performers who embrace emotional depth over bravado. Montgomery Clift's life and death illuminate humanity's complex relationship with memory, mortality, and the masks we wear. We immortalize such figures not just for their achievements, but for their struggle. Through film retrospectives, biographies, and scholarly re-evaluations, we keep his memory alive, not as a fallen icon, but as a deeply human artist who reflected the hidden sorrows of his time. Sally Ride, the first American woman in space, died on July 23, 2012, at the age of 61, after a quiet, courageous battle with pancreatic cancer. Her death was natural, but the life she lived, and the barriers she broke, left a legacy that reshaped the trajectory of space exploration and gender equality in science and technology. In an era when women were still fighting for equal footing in many professional fields, Ride quite literally soared beyond the limits society had placed on them. When she joined NASA in 1978, Ride entered a domain that had long been dominated by men. At just 32 years old, she flew aboard the Challenger in 1983, becoming not only a national hero, but also a symbol of shifting cultural values. Her mission wasn't just technical, it was deeply symbolic. She carried the hopes of countless young women told that science and space were not for them. In interviews, she was often asked more about her makeup and love life than her scientific credentials, yet she navigated the sexism of her time with calm resolve, focusing instead on the importance of her work. The immediate aftermath of her passing was marked by tributes from the scientific community, political leaders, and educators. What made headlines alongside her death was a revelation long kept private. Ride had been in a committed same-sex relationship with her partner, Tam O'Shaughnessy, for 27 years. In a society still coming to terms with LGBTQ+ rights, this posthumous acknowledgement quietly expanded her legacy, casting her once again as a pioneer, not just in space, but in personal courage. Sally Ride's death served as a poignant reminder that heroes can be both extraordinary and private. Her story revealed how progress often hinges not just on grand gestures, but on quiet, persistent work and personal integrity. Through the Sally Ride Science Foundation, textbooks, and the schools named in her honor, her name continues to inspire future generations. Ultimately, Ride's passing reflects humanity's reverence for those who challenge gravity, both literal and societal. We immortalize her through murals, stamps, scholarships, and stories that celebrate her achievements without sensationalizing her struggles. In remembering her, we affirm the power of science, the importance of inclusion, and the enduring human desire to reach for the stars, no matter who we are or where we come from. Pamela Blair, best known for originating the role of Val in the groundbreaking Broadway musical A Chorus Line, died on July 23, 2023, at the age of 73. Her death, attributed to a long illness, was peaceful and private, unlike the exuberant and public life she lived on stage. While not as widely known as some Hollywood icons, Blair's passing marks the loss of a deeply influential figure in American theater and dance, whose work helped shape the way performers told their own stories on stage. Blair emerged during the vibrant and transitional 1970s New York theater scene, This was a time when Broadway was beginning to challenge tradition, experimenting with raw, character-driven narratives. In a chorus line, she portrayed Val, a bold, defiant dancer who famously declared, "Dance 10, looks 3," a satirical and heartfelt commentary on the entertainment industry's obsession with physical perfection. Her role embodied the dual pressures of talent and appearance faced by women in the arts, and her performance was a defiant celebration of owning one's body and identity. The impact of her death may not have sent shockwaves through global headlines, but within the theater world, it was deeply felt. Tributes came from co-stars, directors, and fans who remembered not only her talent, but her generosity as a performer. Her passing was a moment of reflection for an industry that still grapples with the same issues her character highlighted: body image, ageism, and the commodification of performers. Pamela Blair's legacy lives on in the DNA of A Chorus Line, a show that forever altered musical theater by giving dancers a voice and bringing authenticity to the spotlight. Her work helped break down the fourth wall between performer and audience, turning vulnerability into strength. Through revival productions, cast recordings, and performance studies, Blair's influence continues to resonate with new generations of actors who dream of a life on stage. Her death reminds us that not all legacies are built on global fame. Some are carved in sweat, applause, and the quiet revolution of telling the truth. In immortalizing figures like Pamela Blair, through performance, memory, and tribute, we reaffirm the enduring human need to be seen, heard, and remembered, not for perfection, but for honesty, courage, and heart. Emil Griffith, a 6-time world champion in boxing and a trailblazer in sports history, died on July 23, 2013 at the age of 75. His death, from complications related to dementia pugilistica, a form of brain trauma common among boxers, was natural but deeply symbolic. It reflected both the physical cost of his brutal profession and the emotional scars of a singularly tragic moment that haunted his legacy: the death of his opponent, Benny "Kid" Parrott, in the ring. Griffith rose to prominence in the 1960s, an era charged with racial tension, hypermasculinity, and rigid codes of identity. In 1962, during a welterweight title bout at Madison Square Garden, Griffith delivered a flurry of punches that left Parrott in a coma. 11 days later, Parrott died from his injuries. The match, and Parrott's death, was televised live, shocking a nation already grappling with the violent undercurrents of its culture. The incident became a turning point, not just in Griffith's career, but in the public's perception of boxing. For Griffith, it was a private crucible made worse by whispered truths. He was a bisexual man in a hypermasculine sport, and moments before the fatal fight, Parrott had publicly taunted him with a homophobic slur. Griffith's rage in the ring that night, whether consciously provoked or not, became a symbol of personal and cultural conflict, where identity, repression, and violence collided. The consequences were lasting. While Griffith continued to box and win titles, he was never the same. He carried guilt for the rest of his life, once asking in old age, "I killed a man, and the world forgave me. Yet I loved a man, and the world wants to kill me." His passing invited reflection not only on the dangers of boxing, but on the cruelty of enforced silence and societal expectations around gender and sexuality. Today, Emil Griffith is remembered through documentaries, biographies, and a powerful opera, Champion, which tells his story with sensitivity and grace. His life and death illuminate our enduring struggle with mortality, power, and the right to live authentically. In honoring Griffith, we do not just recall a champion in the ring, we remember a man who bore the weight of fame, trauma, and forbidden truth, and whose memory challenges us to see beyond victory or defeat. D.W. Griffith, often credited as one of the founding fathers of modern cinema, died of a cerebral hemorrhage on July 23, 1948, at the age of 73. His death, from natural causes, came at a time when the Hollywood he had helped create had largely moved on without him. The man once hailed as a cinematic genius had become a relic of a complicated past, celebrated for his innovations, but condemned for the racial ideology embedded in his most infamous work, The Birth of a Nation. Griffith's legacy is rooted in contradiction. Technically brilliant, he pioneered narrative techniques such as cross-cutting, close-ups, and epic-scale storytelling. Yet his most influential film glorified the Ku Klux Klan and reinforced racist tropes that aligned with the values of a segregated America still under Jim Crow laws. When The Birth of a Nation was released, it was praised by many in the film industry and even screened at the White House. But it also sparked widespread protest from the NAACP and other civil rights organizations. Griffith defended himself not by apology, but by creating Intolerance, 1916, a sprawling film meant to counter his critics. An ambitious work, though one that failed commercially. By the time of his death, Griffith had been all but exiled from the industry. His innovations had been absorbed and surpassed by a younger generation of filmmakers, while his controversial reputation overshadowed his achievements. The film world did not widely mourn his passing. It was a quiet end for a man who had once made cinema thunder with historical grandeur. In the decades since, Griffith's legacy has continued to provoke debate. Film historians acknowledge his role in shaping cinematic language, while also confronting the harm his storytelling inflicted. Museums, film schools, and festivals now teach his work with context, balancing admiration for his artistry with accountability for his ideology. Griffith's death and the evolving reassessment of his work underscores humanity's uneasy relationship with power and memory. We revere our pioneers, yet we are also forced to reckon with the ideologies they helped normalize. Through documentaries, scholarly essays, and critical retrospectives, Griffith is not erased, but examined, questioned, and ultimately used as a lens to understand how art reflects and influences the values of its time. In doing so, we remember that legacy is not just what we create, but how the world responds to it. Jean Muer, a gifted actress of stage, screen, and early television, died of natural causes on July 23, 1996, at the age of 85. Her death was quiet, but her life, and the shadow cast over it, tells a profound story of mid-20th century American culture, fear, and censorship. Muer was not just a talented performer. She became a cautionary tale of how political paranoia could extinguish a promising career and permanently alter a life. In the 1930s and 1940s, Muer built a reputation as a refined, intelligent actress, known for roles in films like The White Cliffs of Dover and As the Earth Turns. She transitioned seamlessly into the new medium of television in the 1950s. But in 1950, at the height of McCarthyism and the Red Scare, Muer was named in Red Channels, a pamphlet that listed supposed communist sympathizers in the entertainment industry. Her inclusion was based not on proven political affiliations, but on her liberal activism and involvement in cultural organizations, an all-too-common reality for performers during the Second Red Scare. The consequences were swift and devastating. Muer had just been cast in the NBC television series The Aldrich Family, but within days of the listing, she was fired. Sponsors pulled their funding, and NBC caved to public pressure. Though she was never formally charged or proven to be involved in communist activity, Muer was blacklisted. Her flourishing career was derailed, and she never fully recovered her standing in Hollywood or television. Her death, decades later, offered a moment of reflection for an industry still coming to terms with its role in the blacklist era. While she never achieved the posthumous fame of some of her contemporaries, Muer's story now appears in documentaries, academic texts, and histories of American censorship. Her name a symbol of artistic sacrifice and the fragility of reputations during periods of ideological fear. Jean Muer's life and death serve as a powerful reminder of how societies treat dissent and difference in times of perceived threat. We remember her not just as a performer, but as a victim of cultural panic. Through retrospectives, restored performances, and historical scholarship, we preserve her legacy and learn from it. Her story challenges us to protect freedom of expression and to ensure that art remains a space of truth, complexity, and courage, even in the face of political storms. Aliki Vujuklaki, often hailed as the national star of Greece, died on July 23, 1996, at the age of 62, following a battle with pancreatic cancer. Her death, from natural causes, came as a deep shock to a nation that had adored her for decades. Vujuklaki was not just a beloved actress and singer, she was a cultural icon whose work spanned film, theater, and television during some of the most turbulent decades in modern Greek history. Emerging as a star in the late 1950s, Vujuklaki rose to prominence during a time when Greece was recovering from civil war and navigating political instability. Her roles in films like The Fairy and the Man, Madalena, and Alice in the Navy embodied optimism, innocence, and resilience. She became the face of post-war Greek cinema, providing escapism and national pride during difficult times. Her charm and girl-next-door persona offered audiences a comforting image of modern Greek womanhood, graceful, strong, and unshaken. Her passing marked not just the loss of a performer, but the end of a cultural era. The public response was profound. National mourning, extensive media coverage, and an emotional state funeral. Greece lost not only its most famous actress, but a symbol of continuity through decades of social and political change. Her death united generations, from those who had watched her rise on the silver screen to younger fans who knew her through television reruns and theater. In death, Vujuklaki's legend only grew. She remains a constant presence in Greek cultural memory. Her films still broadcast on national holidays, her songs sung by new generations, and her life commemorated in biographies, museums, and even a stage musical about her career. Statues and documentaries continue to celebrate her as a singular figure who shaped Greek identity during the 20th century. Aliki Vujuklaki's life and death illuminate the power of cultural icons to offer unity and hope during national hardship. Her passing reveals humanity's enduring need to connect with figures who reflect our ideals and aspirations. We immortalize such people not merely for their talent, but for the way they anchor collective memory. In honoring Vujuklaki, Greece affirms that certain stars never fade. They become part of a nation's soul.